Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Anybody else that logs on can catch up with us. Before I take any questions, etc., I want to ask how many of you have, and I have you all on mute. Okay, so you have to unmute yourself to speak with me. How many of you have signed up for something called Forewarn? Forewarn. Have any of you signed up for Forewarn? Okay, then I am going to suggest that you go to nvar.com/forewarn and obtain this free service. I've got it here on my screen. I have it and use it, and I like it. But Forewarn,
I did it.
You did it? Have you used it?
But I haven't used it.
Okay, so for those that haven't done it, Forewarn is an app that you put on your phone, and it brings intelligence to you about the party you're talking to. It's a safety measure. You can, by typing in their phone number or their name, you can get verify their identity, their address history, financial indicators, bankruptcy, liens, judgment history, property records, anything they've ever owned, and criminal records, their nationwide criminal history. And, I think it's a pretty good app. That app would normally cost you $240, but it is free as a part of your membership to NVAR.
Where is it on NVR?
NVAR, it's an added benefit for NVAR. If you go to nvar.com/forewarn, you should be able to get to it and sign up for it. So I think, was it Norma that uses it, that has it, and myself? So, but I think every agent should have this. When you get a call from someone you don't know, you type that phone number in there and, it immediately give you their information. If nothing shows up, then I'm going to probably double verify before I go meet somebody that number doesn't check out. Okay, so but just a little added benefit. Like to let you know when any of these things come along, especially when they are free. Okay. So I got a question from Norma, and I'm going to save that one.
That's
So
the last.
till I open it up for. I open it up for, because that one might take a little while.
Yeah.
Before I open it up to anyone, before we do that, I'm going to open it up to questions from anyone else. Anybody have a question that you'd like to ask today? We have a small group today, so.
The notice did not go out. That's why.
Well, I don't have any control over that. So, but everybody knows, unless I tell you otherwise, we're here on Mondays. So you guys made it back. So that's good. Okay. So if there's no other questions, there's a couple of things that came up that I would like to cover before I answer Norma's request. And thank you for sending it. I didn't pick it up until this morning because I was, playing with my grandson all weekend for Halloween. So, but disclosure of interest. Okay. If you or anybody you're related to has an ownership interest in something that's being sold or leased or rented, or they're buying, it must be disclosed in writing in the contract. So let me share with you what our statute says. If a licensee knows or should have known that he, any member of his family, his firm, any member of his firm, or any entity in which he has an ownership interest is acquiring or attempting to acquire or selling or leasing real property through purchase, sale, or lease, and the licensee is a party to the transaction, must disclose in writing that he is a licensee, that he, any member of his family, his firm, or any member of his firm or entity in which he has an ownership interest, has or will have an ownership interest to other parties. You get the idea. So the questions come up, well, what if it's an LLC and I'm not a member of it, but a member of my family is the sole owner of the LLC, and they bought a property, fix it up and flip it. Do I have to disclose? I think you do have to disclose. I mean, you have a personal interest in the profit made from that purchase or that sale. So, I would not take if in doubt, disclose. But I guess I could read this and interpret it. Since I'm not a member of the LLC, I probably did not have to disclose. I'm not going to take that chance myself. Okay. If it's a one person LLC and that's your spouse and they make money off of that sale, it's coming back into your family, I'm disclosing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does to me, right? So please, any doubt, disclose. I even disclose if they're a good friend. I have a close relationship because they're a good friend. I would disclose it simply. What does it hurt? And I probably see the guys I play golf with more often than I do a family member, right? Although, hey, Thanksgiving come up. That's one of the times I would see them, right? But I'm not going to be in the area, so nope, won't see them. So you get the idea. Now, the flip of that is, this is an old statute. It has been around forever when we all represented what party? The seller. Now that the other side has a buyer's agent, I think it's not as drastic if a disclosure is missed, but there's a lawsuit about this. So I'll be interested to see how they rule. My argument is they had their own agent. There was no one damaged if there was a non-disclosure. Okay. Because the party has someone protecting their interest. Well, we'll see what happens, and I'll fill you in another year or so, once the lawsuit's over. Any questions about this? Yes.
Yes. If a friend of mine is buying a house, I don't have to disclose it, right?
Do what? Try that
Friend
again.
of mine, if I have a friend who wants a friend, one of
Yeah,
your
no.
friends, suppose my friend, if they want to
No.
buy the house, do I
No.
have to disclose it?
No,
Okay,
you don't.
thank you.
I do, but you don't have to. And look, you're going to be representing them as a buyer's agent, right?
Right,
Yeah. So where's your interest in this? You're not going to receive any benefit back, right?
right.
Okay.
Okay. I knew that, but I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah. Okay. No, this is the best. This is the best time to ask instead of later when I'd be talking about you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and address Norma's question that she had for me, and then I'll finish up with a commission paragraph if we get a chance to go into it. Pricing a property. She has an unusual situation. There's very, very few of these units in a condo project. Probably hadn't been any sale for a while. How in the world do we come up with what the price should be on that? And that's a tough situation. That's one time that maybe they should go ahead and get a pre-appraisal on it, but they're probably not going to want to spend money on a pre-appraisal. So, Norma, did you do an RPR report on this property yet?
No, I was looking at it and then, there was nothing for me to look at.
Well,
I pulled it by the zip code first, and then I said I would just do all of Arlington. But the point is, there are a few, but then they're so vastly different that they really can't be used.
Okay, so my question though was, have you tried to do an RPR report, Realtor Property Resource Report? Do you use RPR?
Yeah, I started to do it, but of course, in pulling up the comps, I'm stuck right there.
Yeah, well, I would just do a general RPR report. And for those online that have never used a RPR, let's discuss it. If you Google NAR RPR, National Association of Realtors, Realtor Property Resource, it'll take you to a site. And if you're not using RPR, I recommend you sign up today immediately and do this. This is a service that's included in your dues that you pay to an association. You can do a market analysis on any property anywhere in the United States, okay, by typing in the property address. So if you go to go to NAR, National Association of Realtors, Realtor Property Resource.com, I think it is. You need your NERDS number, your national ID number. You will need your Bright MLS number and your email address that NAR uses for you. Sign yourself up and type that property address in as a start, and it will give you a market analysis. And you can do a seller report, which I would do in this case, but there's many different reports you can do, neighborhood reports, etc. And that'll give you a range to start with. Okay. Now, the nice thing about RPR is you could also go in and put your own choice of properties in and do a CMA. I don't do that. I let the system pull it for me, just to give me a starting point. Now, it will either give you an AVM, automated value model, or an RVM. So in your instance, Norma, I think you might get an AVM, automated value model, which takes properties in other buildings and from public records if there's not enough MLS information. But since our MLS does participate, it might have enough information to give you the report that you're after. If it gives you something called an RVM, Realtor Value Model. The difference between an AVM and an RVM incorporates the MLS to the last 15 minutes. AVM only deals with settled properties at the courthouse. So who uses AVM? Zillow. So when you do a Zestimate, it's going to be what we call an AVM.
Mm-hmm.
They've taken public records, which are old because they had to be recorded. They don't know what closing costs were paid. They don't know any of the, the condition of the property, whether it was on a busy road. All they know is room size, etc. So hopefully it would give you an RVM. Now, one of the nice things about this RPR, I can make adjustments to my comparable property according to the condition of the property, improvements, etc. So if you go to a listing and the seller says, look, I spent $20,000 on this kitchen 2 years ago. My house should be worth at least $30,000 more, but we know it's not. How do you overcome that? Well, you can sit right there in front of them and let's see what our system says. And you do the RPR report, seller's report, and you hit revise, and it'll bring up a screen, and you scroll down, you find kitchen. 20,000 is probably a medium upgrade, depending on the property, how much they paid and the date they did it. And it will actually show you what that kitchen is worth today in that neighborhood. So it's a pretty good system to help us overcome. Sometimes I have a buyer ask, well, if I buy this, I'm going to have to redo the kitchen. How much will the house be worth then? And unfortunately, if you're going to flip the property, there's value now. But if you're going to hold on to the property, it's going to go down in value over time. So RPR would be my first start. Now, when I have a
In
there's other
terms of
things.
the distance, Larry, what's the range? You
Do
know,
what?
in terms of the distance from the subject property,
Well,
what do you use there?
This is a condo, so it
Mhm.
should be in the same condo building if possible.
Well,
if not-
we don't have that for sure.
And sure, and if not, then, you know, what you want
Are
to
we
do is
doing-
find, then what you need to do is find condos in the immediate area that would have the same.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking, because the closest, yeah, there's another building in the same zip code.
But
I
you have to
don't know,
check, you have to
does
check.
it have to be like within a mile of the subject
Well-
building, or it doesn't matter? or what?
It should be, and I'm just getting ready to teach a course in this PSA.
Oh, yeah,
It should be relatively close to that. If not, you have to go further back in time to see if you can find some sale in that building or one right around it. But you need to check the amenities of the building because it's important.
yeah, well, I have that, but
Okay.
it's these other things that, you know, the age, for instance,
Yeah.
that's not a big issue.
Well,
How-
here's,
How different can it be? Or
well,
how close should the age be?
all those things need to be adjusted for. There's a
Mhm,
course called PSA Pricing Strategy Advisor.
mhm.
I was supposed to teach it on Wednesday, but I don't think they have enough people, so they'll probably cancel it. Age, if it's within 5 years,
5 years.
yeah, you really don't make too much of an adjustment. With condos, now if we were out in a neighborhood, we say no more than a mile. In the country, 5 miles. You can't do that in close where you are. So here's some other things that I do to help me
Mm.
try to narrow down the value. Okay.
Mhm.
I find other properties is sold in that building. It doesn't have to be the same property. Okay.
Well, there
I-
are 2 bedrooms, but not
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
2 bedrooms as opposed to 3.
Yeah. So here's what I would do. I'd take the net sales price of the comparables, even the 2 bedrooms.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
I'd take, what's the net sales price? What do I mean?
Net. mhm.
Any concessions made, closing cost.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
So you subtract those out. You take the tax assessment for those comparables, each comparable. So you get the net sales price and the tax assessment. You with me so far?
I understand the net, and what am I doing with the tax assessment?
Okay, you look up the tax assessment for the property.
Mhm.
You divide that tax assessment into the net sales price.
Divide the tax into the sales price.
Okay, and that'll give you a percentage. So in other
Okay.
words, if the unit sold for 105,000 and the tax assessment was 100,000 and there were no closing costs, then we would be 1.05 on that one.
Mhm.
Okay, so you do that for all the sales. And here's what I do. I go back. Now it's labor intensive, but it really works for me. I
Mhm.
go back 1 year, 9 months, 6 months, 3 months, and the most current. Okay. In our market, you might only have to go back 6 months, 3 months, and the most current. But what I'm looking for are the prices going up or down. So if 6 months ago it was 1.05, but today it's 1.03, then we know we can go over this with the seller and say, look, 6 months ago, sure, you could have gotten this, but right now, here's what the market's doing. Okay, it's actually gone down in some buildings in places. It has gone down now, and even in Arlington, it's amazing. Okay, so I do that for as many properties as I can find. That gives me a low range and a high range. Now,
Not
take-
just the building, whatever I can find in
Well,
Arlington, or if I
I would
have
do-
enough in my building, how many should I use?
I would do in that building, if not, no more than like a 6-block radius around it.
No, there
okay.
will be enough in the building itself. So
well,
should I do like 5,
well,
just 5 or 6?
Yeah, you want to get a feel for what the market is doing in that area.
Mhm.
Okay, so now if I have these numbers, then I multiply it times the tax assessment of my unit.
Hold on, the price, what am I multiplying by the?
Now, once you
Percentage
took that net sales price,
Mhm.
and you divided it by the tax assessment for that
Right.
particular comp,
Mhm.
that'd
Mhm.
give you, so maybe the highest was 1.05, and I
Mhm.
would take that 1.05, multiply it times the tax assessment on my subject unit.
Times the tax assessment on subject property. Okay. Mhm.
Okay, and I would do it for, the high factor, middle factor, and low factor. It gives you a price range.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
now what I would do, what I want to do with these is I'm going to run an RPR report, right? And I want to use these different things I do to compare to what the report says,
Mhm.
because I want to get a good feel that what we're telling them, is in that price range they should be in.
Mhm.
The other thing I do is I take the list price of properties in the area, okay? And I divide it by their tax assessment. So if there's are there any units on the market in that building now?
Hmm?
Are there any other units on the market in that building? Not 3-bedroom, but just any units.
Yes.
So I would take, if they're listed now, I would take the list price and divide it by the tax assessments. And that'd give me a number, high and low, so I can show them this is what people are trying to do. Right?
Mhm.
And I would multiply that times my subject property. Because then I take the sales price of the properties. Okay. Any properties that I can find is sold, and I divide it by the original list price.
The
So
original list price.
So the sales
Mhm.
price divided by the original list price.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Then that shows, even though these people were asking this much money,
Mhm.
this is what they really got. And you can show them if you put the property on the market for too much. Okay. This is how much they got compared to the people who put it on at the right percentage
Mhm.
in the beginning. They actually get more for their house by pricing it right out of the chute than they do by trying the market.
High and then go down. Mhm.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I do is a square footage figure. So I take the tax assessment for the improved value, and it will show, how much the improved value is, not the land. The land I'm not worried about, right? Especially in a condo. So if I take the tax assessment and I divide it by the tax record square footage. So to keep it simple, the figure for the tax assessment is $1,000, right?
Mhm.
And the tax square footage of the unit is 100 square feet. Well, then that's $10 per square feet is what the county is, what we're valuing that property at. So once I identify that square footage number, I can multiply it times the square footage of my unit. And that also gives me a number. So these steps I take, I'm looking to see how close my numbers are to my CMA or my RPR report.
Mhm.
Okay, so that I'm trying to show the owner in different ways. The
Mhm.
only other thing that they could do is order an appraisal. But the problem with that, if somebody gets a pre-appraisal on their property and it comes in higher than the appraisal in the sales contract, right? Then they're going to be saying, no, that appraiser must be wrong because I already have this and I want this for the property. So I usually don't recommend pre-appraisals unless the property is so unique. But this was, even though there's been no other sales, I think you can come up with a value with these steps. So to recap, I do the RPR report.
Now so in doing the RPR report, and you're talking about you have things that you need to adjust. So I'm back to, like, for instance, the square footage.
No, you wouldn't,
How-
you don't need to, you don't
Don't
need to
do
adjust any of that.
those. Don't do anything with
No,
those.
it will do it for you. It's already done in the RPR report.
Huh.
Okay.
Oh, so when, no,
So
well,
when
I
you
thought
go-
I had
when
to
you
do
go-
that before to come up
no,
with it. I don't make
no.
any adjustments, just run them on the
No.
RPR.
It may choose units from different buildings,
Mhm,
but there you have a logarithms to make the difference already for you.
mhm,
So just to start, I always do an RPR report on any property, even if a buyer's going to buy. Okay.
mhm,
What you would make adjustments for with RPR
mhm.
is you could say, okay, they put upgraded cabinets in. Is that worth any money? Okay. It may be right now, but in 2 years, those cabinets will probably be out of style, right?
Mhm.
So things, anything that would add value to the property, you can make the adjustment. And there's a screen that shows you the different things that, they consider that would add value to the property.
Mhm.
But so I would do the RPR report. Then I
I'm
would do
just
my,
doing it on just the one property then, is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
yeah, no, it will pull the comps up for you. If you go to RPR,
Yeah, but
and
if I'm
say-
not finding any comps, I can only find one comp.
but the system will. You don't have to. RPR finds them for you.
That's what I'm saying, only one comes up based on what I put in there.
And the RPR
I put in the
report,
zip code, yeah, I put in the zip code.
no, put the property address in RPR and run a seller's report. Okay. It'll find the comps for you.
Okay.
You don't have to labor and do all that with the RPR report.
Okay.
Okay. And that'll give you a starting point. It'll give you an AVM or RVM figure, but then it gives you a range. Okay.
Yeah, well, at the
Okay.
top of it, as you go in there, it has the AVM and RVM, so you know what that is already.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then I do this with every listing and every sale, these steps.
Really?
Okay. So because I want the buyer to sign off that I've shown them this information and they chose the price. And I have sellers sign something similar that says, hey, this is the information, I chose the price. Okay. And they write in the price. But then I do that net sales price divided by tax assessments for any comps that I come up with in the area.
I
And,
need
you know,
to start
and-
doing that, get a practice.
Yeah, I mean, it just gives me, makes me feel more comfortable that the RPR report, or or the CMA, if you run the CMA in Bright, right? The more things you can give them to make a decision. But I do each of those steps I talked about, the list price divided by the tax assessment, sales price by original list price, and the square footage. I do all those steps because I wanted people to feel comfortable with, what I'm telling them.
So these are the things you cover in your course?
Yeah, we cover all that in that course. It's called PSA Pricing Strategy Advisor. Unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be canceled for this time. It would be first of the year before they reschedule.
Yeah.
I may do one here at Fairfax Realty first of the year.
Well, I'd like to know about it.
Right now, what they want us to do is, I mean, here in company wise, do the short sale foreclosure resource.
Mm,
So I'll probably slip that one in December. So,
mhm,
you know, but PSA is a good class.
mhm.
Actually,
I
what
think
you
I
do.
did it years ago, but I don't remember.
So what they do is in the class, you have to, in work groups, identify the 3 of the 11 comps you would use, and then later make adjustments and explain why you made the adjustments, etc.
Mhm.
So it's a hands-on type class.
Yeah, yeah, you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody have any question about what Norma and I have just been discussing? Do the steps make sense to you that I go through?
Yeah, they do.
Sir. Because sometimes you're just going to come up against a property where there's not enough comps like Norma's going through. But in the past, I didn't have the luxury of having RPR, right? So it makes a big difference.
So with the buyer now, you would be doing what?
The buyer, I do the same exact thing.
Yeah,
Show them what they should be paying for a property,
Mhm.
what they should be offering for the property. I mean, if they come in and want to offer 20% less, and the market's showing that, you know, the sales price divided by the list price, and it's showing that people are paying 10% above price just to get the property, then you wanting to go in at 10% less than list price. If we done the list price and tax assessment show that the people are right there on the market, don't be disappointed if you don't get the property.
Mhm,
But at the
mhm.
same time, if I go back 6 months, 3 months, and most current, and 6 months ago, people were making offers of 1.2 or 20% above list price to get a property. 3 months ago, it was only 10%, and most recently, it's been 5%. Then don't go in 20% above. You know,
Right.
it's indicating that we're having, the market is shifting back. Of course,
Mhm.
it could shift the other way too. So when I bought my condo, how did I come up with a figure that I would offer and feel like I could get it, not offering full price? I did the same thing and I got it for what the real market value was. Appraisal came in at that. I knew it would, anything
Mhm.
higher wouldn't have come in because taxes, I mean, the appraisers do the same steps I'm doing.
Mhm.
Okay. You have replacement cost and rental you wouldn't use in this instance, but so appraisers are doing basically the same thing.
Mhm.
And they have to make pluses and minuses. So here's a big problem that a lot of agents make. They try to make changes to the to the subject property instead of what an appraiser does. Okay. An appraiser can only use settled properties. So
Mm.
any adjustments have to be to that comp. So if the seller did something to the property, well, let's say that the seller's property has a 3-car garage and the other ones have a 2-car garage. Okay. Well, then you would have to isolate the value of that 3-car garage. Now, a 3-car garage out in Gainesville is probably a bonus selling point, right? Because most of the people out there are going to have kids driving and they need that 3rd garage. But if
Mhm.
it's in Arlington and most people are commuting by, public transportation, that 3rd stall in that garage may not be worth as much. And that's what you have to work your way through.
They don't
So,
exist anyway.
yeah.
You're lucky if you
So-
get one.
So here's some acronyms that you would use. SBA. So if the subject is better, then you add money to the comparables to come up with the value of the listing. You don't add to your listing. Okay. And if and then CBS, if comp is better, you subtract. So, you always make adjustments to knowns, and that's what appraisers do. So if you ever see an appraisal you'll see pluses and minuses, not made to the subject property, but to the comparables they used. And that's basically what our RPR system does.
Okay. So how would you deal with, for instance, the same scenario, because they know you don't have any comps, if looking from a buyer's side, and they just think, okay, fine, they can, offer anything,
Well, they can offer anything, but if the market in that area, so is this in South Arlington or North Arlington?
Yes.
Okay. So in South Arlington, the value is going to be different in South Arlington than North Arlington, correct?
Yes.
I mean, Arlington Boulevard is the dividing line. You could have a house in Arlington Forest on the north side of 50, and it's going to sell for more than the same exact house on the south side. Okay. I mean, it's just a natural a man-made barrier we talk about in the course. Now, but if I can take the general area, okay, the general area. So I could take the area right around that condo building, and I can use these different figures that I'm doing. And you can get a feel for how much more a property is selling for in that particular area or not selling for. So if I take comps from 3 different buildings in that area, okay, and they're all coming out at 1.5, from a low of 1.1 to a high of 1.5 in all 3 buildings, then that market area is showing me that you're going to probably have to offer 1.05 or whatever, no matter what building it is in or whatever, unless there's major lawsuits or something against the building. Okay. So I can get a feel for just the general market area if all else fails.
All right. Okay. All right. I have a lot of work to do.
Yep.
To start using it. I don't use it as
And that's the key. That's the key. That's the key word to this business. It is work. I've had people say, well, I'm leaving the business. I'm going out and get a real job. Well, that's the reason you're leaving. That's the reason you're leaving the business. You never considered this what? Work. You thought it was supposed to be easy.
It's work.
It's a tough job.
You want the money.
It's a tough job.
Yep, sure is.
Does anybody else have any other questions here today?
Larry,
so-
what are the new changes in the disclosure form? Are there anything coming up? I know that 2022, there is something going on there.
Okay, so January 1, 2022, okay, it deals with flood zones. And if an owner knows, well, they'd have to know, an owner has to disclose if they have made more than 3 claims in the 3 or 2, I'd have to double check. I think it's 3 claims of $1,000 or more on flood insurance. Then there's a 1-page disclosure form that would have to be used. But if they have not, then it's not necessary. DPOR also has to add a change to their disclosure that warns people that they, about the floodplain and this new change coming up. It's not going to affect too many people because the owner would have actually had to make a claim. Okay. And of $1,000 or more. So it's that change on the 2022 is not going to be that drastic.
So you're talking about all the claim or just the flood claim?
The flood claim.
Just
Flood
the flood.
insurance against the flood insurance claim. And there'll be a form for this. So it would be a mandatory form that would have to be used by the owner if they had made three or more claims in the last 10 years of $1,000 or more against a flood insurance policy.
Okay.
Okay. And that's what the change is coming up January 1. Maybe next session, we'll just go over the Disclosure Act again in Virginia, what has to be disclosed and not. Because there are 5 mandatory disclosures, but 14 I'm not telling you I have. And the 14, one of the 14 I'm not telling you I have is the floodplain. But they are adjusting that where an owner would have to disclose if they had made those claims. Okay. All right. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to hold off the discussion about the commissions and all until I have more people online.
Mhm.
So thank you for joining me today, even though the notice didn't go out. I will be here next Monday again at 11.